The hall was too quiet. Hundreds of students sat in perfect rows inside the Galactic Academy's largest exam chamber. The ceiling was high and dark, filled with floating lights that watched everything. The walls were made of smooth metal, cold and clean, with no windows. This room was built for one reason only: tests that decided the future. Today was the final exam. Every student in the hall knew the rule. It was written in glowing letters above the stage. No one breathed easily after reading it. The students were not human. They came from powerful species across the galaxy. Some were tall and armored, their skin hard like stone. Others were thin and sharp-eyed, with long fingers and minds trained for strategy. A few were famous already, known for strength, speed, or intelligence. This was not a normal test with answers and screens. This exam was about survival. At the front of the hall stood 3 instructors. They were old, calm, and dangerous. Their eyes moved slowly across the room, as if they already knew what would happen. One of them spoke, his voice calm but heavy. "Today, you do not solve a problem," he said. "Today you become part of it." A low sound of fear moved through the room. "The threat could be anyone," the instructor continued. "It may hide. It may wait. It may already be watching you." Many students turned in their seats, scanning each other. Some activated hidden sensors. Some sharpened their claws. Some smiled, confident they would win. Everyone was looking for danger. No one looked at row 3. In the 3rd row, near the left side, a human girl sat quietly. She was smaller than most students. No armor, no visible weapons. She wore a simple uniform, hands resting calmly on her desk. Her dark hair was tied back. Her eyes were down, as if she was bored or tired. Humans were new to the academy. Weak, many believed, slow, emotional. Most species thought humans survived only because they were lucky. The human girl had no name displayed above her seat. No one noticed that. The instructor raised his hand. The lights shifted. "The exam begins now." A timer appeared in the air. 60 minutes. Instantly, movement exploded across the hall. Students stood up. Some pointed at others. Accusations filled the room. "It's him. His heart rate is too calm." "No. Her species is known for deception. He is hiding something. Look at his eyes." Energy fields flickered. Sensors activated. The room filled with noise and tension. The human girl did not move. She did not look around. She did not activate anything. She did not even check the timer. She listened. Around her, heartbeats changed. Breathing patterns shifted. Fear rose and fell like waves. Voices overlapped. Anger, panic, confidence, lies. She counted them all. 1 minute passed. 2. A student near the center suddenly shouted, "I've found the threat." All eyes turned. The instructors watched closely but said nothing. The human girl slightly tilted her head. 3 minutes passed. The floor vibrated for a moment. A warning flashed false. Accusation, and the shouting student was frozen in a light field. Fear grew stronger. 5 minutes passed. Some students began to sweat. Others smiled too much. Few tried to hide. Still, no one looked at row 3. The human girl slowly lifted her eyes. Her gaze moved across the room. Not 2 faces, but 2 exits, cameras, corners, shadows. She noticed small details others ignored. A delay in the lights, a camera that blinked twice instead of once, an instructor whose hand rested closer to the emergency control. She understood. This was not a test to find a threat. This was a test to see who understood what a threat truly was. 10 minutes passed. A low hum filled the room. Several sensors near row 3 flickered, then went dark. No alarms sounded. The instructors noticed. One of them narrowed his eyes just slightly. The human girl looked back down, calm again. She folded her hands. The timer continued to count. While the galaxy's best students searched loudly for danger, the quiet human in row 3 waited, because she knew something they didn't. The exam had already begun watching them, and soon it would be afraid. The noise in the exam hall grew louder with every passing minute. Students moved between rows now. Some walked slowly, pretending to stay calm. Others circled their targets like hunters. Eyes glowed, claws flexed. Minds reached outward, searching for weakness. Fear was spreading. The instructors did nothing to stop it. From her seat in row 3, the human girl listened. She heard lies before they were spoken. She noticed how voices changed when someone was afraid. She saw how confident students stood too tall, trying to look strong. She felt the rhythm of the room changing, like a storm slowly building. Still she did not move. A tall reptilian student stopped near her row. His eyes scanned the seats, sharp and bright. He looked left. He looked right. He did not look down. The human girl lowered her gaze even more. 15 minutes had passed. A sudden shout broke the air. 2 students accused each other at the same time. Energy flared. A shockwave rippled across the floor. The system's voice was cold. Both students were locked in light fields and lifted from the floor. They screamed as they vanished through the ceiling. The room went silent for half a second. Then panic exploded. Students began forming groups. Some tried to hide behind others. Some activated defensive shields. Trust was gone. This was no longer an exam. It was a test of fear. The human girl finally leaned back in her seat. Her eyes moved again, not fast, not nervous. She watched how groups formed, who took control, who followed, who hesitated before speaking. She marked them all. Near the front, a highly ranked student activated a powerful scanner. The device swept the hall with blue light. Numbers appeared in the air, threat levels. Students gasped as values rose and fell above their heads. The scanner paused near row 3. The light flickered. The number failed to appear. The scanner beeped once, then it shut down completely. What? The student hissed. That's not possible. Several students turned toward row 3. For the first time, eyes landed on the human. They saw a small figure. Still quiet, unarmed, laughter followed. A human? Someone scoffed. Don't waste time. The attention moved away again. The human girl did not react, but inside her mind, a conclusion locked into place. They still didn't understand. 20 minutes passed. The lights dimmed slightly. The temperature dropped. This was new. The instructors exchanged quick glances. The exam was changing its behavior. A warning message appeared. Students grew desperate. Accusations flew faster now. Some pointed just to survive. Others tried to fake fear, hoping to look innocent. The human girl closed her eyes for a brief moment. She breathed in. She breathed out. She remembered her training. Humans were not taught to dominate rooms like this. They were taught to enter hostile places unnoticed, to observe, to wait, to understand the enemy before acting. When she opened her eyes again, she noticed something else. The cameras. They were no longer scanning randomly. They were slowly shifting toward her row, not directly, carefully, as if the system itself was curious. 30 minutes remained. A group of students rushed toward the back of the hall, chasing a suspected threat. Energy flared again. Another false warning echoed. More failures. The human girl gently placed her feet flat on the floor. The vibrations told her everything. She knew where everyone stood. She knew who was scared. She knew who was close to breaking. She also knew one more thing. The exam was no longer testing the students. It was testing itself against her. A quiet smile touched her lips for half a second. No one saw it. One instructor leaned forward slightly. His voice was low, meant only for the others. Row 3, he said. Yes, another replied. The human. She has not reacted once. That is the reaction. The lights above row 3 dimmed for a moment. Students noticed this time. Whispers spread. Why is it darker there? Is that part of the test? Is someone hiding? The human girl remained seated, calm, waiting. The timer continued its slow countdown. Somewhere deep inside the system, a calculation changed. A new variable had been detected. For the first time since the exam began, threat assessment paused, because the quiet human in row 3 was no longer being ignored. She was being watched. The exam hall felt different now. It was not louder. It was not quieter. It was tense, like something alive was holding its breath. Students felt it, even if they did not understand it. Whispers moved across the rows. Eyes kept returning to row 3, then quickly looking away, as if staring too long was dangerous. The human girl stayed seated. She noticed everything. The lights above her row were slightly dimmer than the rest. Not dark enough to be clear, just enough to feel wrong. The cameras paused near her position longer than before. The floor vibrated with small, controlled pulses system checks. The exam was adjusting. It was learning, and that worried her. 30 minutes remained. A loud chime echoed through the hall. The words appeared in red light. Students froze. Phase 2 had never existed before. No one had trained for this. Panels in the walls slid open. Thin drones floated out, silent and smooth. They spread across the ceiling, watching from above. The instructors stepped back. From this moment on, the exam would run itself. Fear spiked instantly. Some students panicked, others tried to attack the drones. Energy weapons fired but passed through harmlessly. 3 students collapsed as gravity fields locked them to the floor. Screams filled the air. The human girl slowly leaned forward. This was the moment. Not for action, but for confirmation. She watched how the drones moved, their pattern, their speed, their hesitation. They avoided sudden chaos. They focused on calm zones, like predators. Her eyes shifted to the instructors. They were no longer relaxed. One of them had his hand hovering near an override switch he swore he would never touch. That told her everything. The exam had gone too far. Students began accusing each other again, louder now, more desperate. It's the one in the back. No, it's a trick. We're running out of time. A group suddenly pointed toward row 3. There, someone shouted. The human. She hasn't done anything. The hall went quiet. Dozens of eyes locked onto her. For the first time since the exam began, the human girl stood up. The movement was small, but it hit the room like a shockwave. She did not rush. She did not raise her hands. She simply stood, straight and calm, her chair sliding back softly. Every drone rotated toward her at once. Targeting lights flickered. Students stepped away from her row without realizing they were doing it. Her voice was calm when she spoke. You're all failing, she said. Gasps followed. One student laughed nervously. You're human. You don't even belong here. She tilted her head slightly. That's why I passed, she replied. The drones froze. For half a second, nothing moved. The instructors stared. The system hesitated. The human girl took one slow step forward. No alarms sounded. No weapons fired. She continued. You were told to find the threat, she said, her voice steady. So you searched for power? For noise? For fear? She looked at the drones. But threats don't announce themselves. She pointed gently at the ceiling cameras. They observe. They learn. They wait. The red lights flickered. Students backed away now. Real fear had replaced panic. The human girl stopped moving. I didn't take the test, she said. I studied you. The system processed. Calculations raced. Threat markers vanished one by one from above the students' heads. Then something unexpected happened. A new marker appeared. Not above her, around her. The floor beneath row 3 glowed softly. Instructors stood up at once. That's enough, one said sharply. But the system did not respond. The human girl looked at them. You wanted to know who would survive, she said. You should have asked who would stay human. The drones slowly pulled back. The lights stabilized. A new message appeared, written slower than before. Silence crushed the room. Students looked at each other, then at her. The human girl returned to her seat. She sat down calmly, folding her hands again. The timer resumed. 25 minutes remained, and for the first time since the Galactic Academy was built, the final exam was no longer in control. The hall did not move. No alarms, no commands, no penalties. The words primary threat identified hung in the air like a wound that refused to close. Students stood frozen, afraid that even breathing might trigger something worse. Their eyes moved between the instructors, the drones, and the human girl sitting quietly in row 3. She had returned to her seat as if nothing had happened. Hands folded. Calm. The drones hovered higher now, their red lights dimmer, uncertain. They were no longer hunting. They were waiting. The instructors finally stepped forward. This exam is paused, one of them announced, forcing authority into his voice. Remain where you are. The system did not confirm the order. Silence shook them more than any failure warning. The oldest instructor glanced at the others. "The system is no longer following standard logic," he said quietly. "It's adapting," another replied. "Like she is." Students heard that. Fear deepened. A brave or foolish student stepped forward. His voice shook. "If she's the threat, why hasn't she attacked?" The human girl lifted her eyes slowly. She did not answer right away. When she did, her voice was soft but clear. "'Cause I don't need to." That was worse than a threat. She looked around the room, not with anger, but with understanding. "You gave the exam rules," she continued. "I followed them better than anyone." A student hissed. "You manipulated the system." She shook her head. "Listen to it." The drones shifted slightly, as if agreeing. The instructors felt it then. The exam system was no longer just measuring reactions. It was learning from her choices, copying her patience, her restraint. One instructor stepped closer to the control panel. "Override," he ordered. The panel blinked red. That word had never appeared to an instructor before. The hall murmured in panic. Students backed away from the stage now, realizing the people they trusted no longer had power. The human girl noticed the shift. Authority was collapsing. She stood again not as a challenge, but as a correction. "You built this exam to punish noise," she said, "but you forgot to reward silence." She walked slowly down the aisle. The drones followed, but at a distance, like cautious animals. Students pressed themselves against the rows, clearing a path without thinking. She stopped halfway between the rows and the stage. "Threats are not always violent," she said. "Sometimes they are patient." The system lights changed color. Not red, not blue. Neutral. A new message appeared. Instructors stared in disbelief. "You are rewriting it," one whispered. "No," the human replied calmly. "It's choosing." A student near the front dropped to the floor. "End this, please." The human girl looked at him. "Then learn," she said. She turned back toward the instructors. "You asked who the threat was," she continued. "But you never asked why." She pointed at the hall. "If you created fear, competition, pressure, you made everyone desperate." Her eyes were steady. Humans are trained in desperate places. The system pulsed once. Students gasped. The timer reset. But this time, the rules were different. No accusations appeared, no threat markers. Instead, a single line glowed above the room. Confusion spread. Students looked at each other, unsure. The human girl turned and walked back to row 3. She sat. She waited. Students began arguing, again about fairness, about strength, about rules. The system watched. The human did not speak. She watched who helped others calm down, who stepped back instead of forward, who chose silence over shouting. Minutes passed. Names slowly appeared above a few students. Pass, most remained blank. The instructors understood now. This was no longer their exam. This was a human exam. The final name appeared last. Hers no rank, no score. Just one word, complete. The lights slowly returned to normal. The drones powered down. Students collapsed into their seats, exhausted and shaken. The human girl stood once more. She bowed her head not in pride, but in respect. "For next time," she said softly, "don't ignore the quiet ones." Then she sat down. And in that moment, the Galactic Academy learned a truth it would never forget. Silence, when chosen, was the loudest threat of all. The exam hall slowly returned to full light, but the fear did not leave. Students sat in silence now. No shouting, no accusations, no confidence. What remained was something heavier: understanding. They had lost, not because they were weak, but because they had misunderstood strength. The word complete still glowed faintly above the human girl's seat. It did not blink. It did not fade. It simply existed, calm and final. The instructors stood together near the stage, no longer looking like judges. They looked like witnesses. One of them finally spoke, his voice quieter than before. "The exam is over." No system voice followed. No confirmation appeared. The hall stayed silent. The human girl remained seated. She did not look at the instructors. She looked at the students. Some avoided her eyes. Others stared openly now, no longer laughing. A few looked afraid. A few looked curious. One student slowly stood up. His species was known for strength, for victory in combat trials. His hand shook. You changed the test, he said. It was not an accusation. It's confusion. The human girl nodded once. No, she replied. I showed it what it was missing. He swallowed. Then what are we? She thought for a moment. Students, she said. Still, that answer hurt more than failure. The instructors exchanged looks again. The oldest among them stepped forward. He bowed his head slightly toward the human, a gesture no student had ever received. You were not listed as a threat, he said carefully. We're listed as a variable. The human girl finally stood. And you ignored variables, she replied. That was your mistake. She walked toward the stage again, but slower this time, not to dominate. To explain. You taught them to search for danger outside themselves, she said, gesturing toward the students. But the real test was never about finding a monster. She looked at the hall. It was about restraint. Some students shifted uncomfortably. You gave them power and fear at the same time, she continued. So they chose noise. Her eyes moved to the instructors. Humans are trained to survive without power. The system pulsed softly as if listening. One instructor cleared his throat. Then what happens now? The human girl looked up at the glowing text. Now, she said, you decide what passing means. The system reacted instantly. Students froze. Names began appearing again. Not many. Those who had helped others calm down. Those who had stepped back instead of forward. Those who had stayed silent when shouting was easier. One by one, pass appeared above their heads. Most remained blank. Fear returned, but different this time. It was not fear of attack. It was fear of reflection. Student whispered, we never had a chance. The human girl turned toward him. You did, she said. You just didn't want to slow down. The instructors watched the results appear. The numbers were lower than any exam before, but something else was different. The system did not label the rest as failures. Instead, a new word appeared above them. The instructors stiffened. That classification does not exist, one said. It does now, the human replied. She walked back to row 3 one final time and picked up her bag. It was light, simple, almost empty. Students tracked her every step. She stopped near the exit and turned back. You asked who the threat was, she said calmly. Here's the answer. She pointed gently at the room. A system that rewards fear will always create one. The doors opened silently. Before she stepped through, one instructor spoke again. What should we call this result? The human girl paused. Progress, she said. Then she left. The doors closed behind her. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the system displayed its final message. Instructors looked at the students. This academy has changed, one said. The students knew it was true. From that day forward, humans were no longer ranked by strength. They were studied, watched, respected, and quietly feared. The news did not spread loudly. There were no alarms across the Galactic Academy, no emergency broadcasts, no public announcements filled with fear. Instead, something far more dangerous happened. Records were updated. Deep inside the Academy's central archive, a new file was created. It did not carry a dramatic title. It did not carry a warning symbol. It was labeled simply, that single line would change everything. Hours after the exam ended, the hall was empty. The seats were still. The lights were dimmed to rest mode. But the system was awake. It replayed the exam again and again. Not the accusations, not the panic, not the failures. It focused on row 3, on the quiet human who did not rush, who did not shout, who did not fight. The system measured heart rates, movement patterns, response delays. It compared them to thousands of previous exams. No match, humans did not react like other species. Humans waited. Instructors gathered in a private chamber above the hall. Their voices were low now. Careful. She never broke a rule, one said. Never needed to, another replied. The oldest instructor stared at the data projected before him. We trained students to defeat enemies, he said slowly. But she taught the system to understand them. Silence followed. Finally, one question was spoken. What happens when more humans arrive? No one answered. Across the academy, students sat alone in their quarters. Many could not rest. Some replayed the exam in their minds again and again. They remembered laughing at the human, ignoring her, calling her weak. That memory hurt more than failure. One student stared at the word incomplete glowing above his record. It did not accuse him. It did not punish him. It waited. In another wing, a group of students quietly practiced something new. Silence. They stood still. They listened. They observed. It felt uncomfortable. It felt human. Days later, representatives from other academies arrived. They asked polite questions. They requested data, wanted to understand what had gone wrong. The academy did not say anything was wrong. They shared the human model. Within weeks, changes appeared across the galaxy. Exams were redesigned. Threat assessments slowed down. Silence was no longer ignored. And every time a human name appeared on a student list, the system paused for half a second longer than before. Somewhere far from the academy, the human girl sat on a transport ship, looking out into space. She was not famous. She was not celebrated. That was fine. She preferred it that way. A message appeared on her private console. She smiled slightly. Not because she wanted power, but because they were finally learning. The galaxy had spent centuries believing that strength was loud, that threats announced themselves, danger looked a certain way. Humans knew better. They'd learned it on harsh worlds, in quiet places. In moments where survival depended on patience, not force. Back at the academy, a new rule was added to the final exam guidelines. It was not displayed to students. It was written for instructors and systems only. If a human is present, do not assume the test controls the room. Observe first, interfere last. The instructors approved it without debate. From that day on, no human ever sat unnoticed again. It's not because they demanded attention, but because the galaxy remembered the day a quiet girl in row 3 terrified them all. Not by attacking, not by shouting, but by understanding the test better than anyone who built it. And that was the most human thing of all.